Senior Vice President for Risk Management Solutions at Bankers Bank. I'm also a certified community bank risk specialist and your host for today's session. This program is brought to you by Bankers Bank, the Midwest's leading provider of correspondent banking services to community banks. As an independent source of non-competing financial services, Bankers Bank serves a market of over 600 financial institutions and provides a strong portfolio of innovative solutions to help our community banks thrive and focus on the needs of our customers and communities. Our risk topic for today is strategy to stabilities, managing succession risk planning in community banking. We're going to learn some best practices for identifying key employees at your bank, how to develop their skills to become future leaders in transition plans. And then we'll discuss some of the risk involved with succession planning when it's both planned and unplanned. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few logistics. Due to the number of attendees, your phone lines have been muted. If you have any questions, please submit those via the chat box, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. And we're recording this webinar today, and we'll share a copy of it with you, along with the slides, to anyone who signed up and attended. We'll also be directed at the end of the email for a short survey about the webinar. We'd like for you to complete that and share any ideas you have for some future webinar topics, because we try to keep these relevant to what our community bank customers want to have. Joining me today is Ryan Ullman, and she's the Director of Human Resources at Bankers Bank. She's been at Bankers Bank for 5 years, and she's located in our Madison, Wisconsin office. She's going to cover succession planning and talent planning to start us out. And then I'll meet back with you for the second half, where we will discuss risk to strategy and reputation, as well as systemic risk. And you knew I was going to say that, systemic risk. That's an important part of enterprise risk management when it comes to senior leadership changes and how you can identify those risks. So I'll pass things over to Ryan, who has some important pieces of knowledge to share about this essential part of risk management.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you, David. I am Ryan Ullman, the HR Director at Bankers Bank, and I'm excited about our topic today. As we round out the year and look ahead, I think the main goal I'd like for each of you to come away with today is that you gain some valuable insights that you can take with you to your organizations. We're diving into a topic that's often discussed at our organizations, but not always acted upon with the urgency that it needs, and that's succession planning. We certainly live in a world where change is constant and talent is more mobile than ever. And organizations today face unprecedented shifts in workforce dynamics, and they're driven by a lot of factors: rapid innovation, evolving employee expectations, and increased career mobility. And this reality demands that we move beyond static workforce strategies and embrace proactive planning. And building that resilience into your talent approach isn't optional, it's essential for sustaining your growth, retaining your top performers, and preparing for the future. So I'll spend some time today giving succession planning tips and tools that can be used, as well as discuss how being reactive with your talent planning can drive some greater risks. As an HR professional, my main focus is helping the business to be successful. And that's not just really managing talent, but looking long-term at having future leaders ready. So by asking this question, do we have the talent in place that we need for the future? You really begin to think about what you're prepared for. Think about your position. Who would be ready to step in for you? And we're always managing several risks at our organizations. And I would say many times our minds go towards external risks first, and we talk about them every day in a lot of our meetings. Market dynamics, competitors, technology relevancy, but disruptions can often happen internally as well. And we tend to think about those sometimes second. Sudden talent departures can absolutely cause risks that are equal to or even greater than external risks, especially from an organizational culture perspective. So we really need to balance the risks and prepare as much as we can as you look ahead. Our team at Bankers Bank views succession planning as a strategic imperative. So what does that mean? It really isn't just an HR function. It's not a standalone. It's a business continuity strategy. Being talent ready is imperative to protect a few important items for us: customer and shareholder value, preserving institutional knowledge, and ensuring that we have stable leadership to support our customer and employee needs. And we know the business environment is always changing. Making the ability to anticipate leadership transitions and prepare for them proactively, extremely important. And we can all agree, I don't think there's anybody on this call that doesn't agree with me that it's important, but we also probably agree that it's extremely easy to overcomplicate talent planning and can be overwhelming on where to start, even for an HR leader. So if you take the approach of trying to embed your succession planning into the organization's culture, leadership development becomes top of mind and spills into the culture and employee engagement naturally. So when people see a path forward, they're more likely to stay and grow with you, and that's what builds leadership and succession readiness. I think of succession planning like building a championship sports team. I've played basketball, so I thought, why not bring in basketball to the equation here? You don't want to wait until your star player is injured to find a replacement. And you don't want to just rely on one MVP player. You scout, you train, and prepare that talent that can step in. And this mindset helps ensure that your performance at your high performance at your organization. Think about what helped them accomplish this championship. What's the secret for the team to be successful that season, or that franchise to have a successful season year after year? And it really comes down to high-performing teams have a clear and intentional vision. Any former sports players or coaches have likely experienced different leadership styles, or even within your organizations and your teams. Great teams or even winning teams are built on strong leadership. And that's how we think about it at our organization. You want to start with our strategic planning process, which drives our succession vision, which is the foundation for our succession plan. When you invest in employee development, it's not just about enhancing performance, it's a strategic move to ensure long-term success at your company. When you focus on building from within through experiences and growth opportunities, that's when you build a strong internal pipeline of future leaders. So if your succession plans are stale or they need a boost, having a strategic vision is a great place to begin those discussions and identifying who in your organization should be involved. For our team, we have our CEO, human resources, and executive leadership all have actionable roles in talent vision and planning. So what is succession planning? Succession planning is a proactive process of preparing people to fill key roles in the future so your organization can keep moving forward without disruption. According to the Society of Human Resource Management, 67% of organizations lack a formal succession plan, exposing them to significant talent risks. And according to Forbes, 66% of CEOs report difficulty finding qualified internal candidates for leadership roles. It's a strategic risk. The statistic highlights a missed opportunity. If you communicate and demonstrate the importance of talent development and succession into the organization's culture, the investment results will show, and it's truly a smart investment for any organization. I found some of these statistics interesting. The risk when a leader leaves up to 40% productivity loss can occur in affected departments, along with 25% increase in turnover amongst their direct reports. Let that sink in a little bit. 60% of organizations say, according to Deloitte, we are not prepared for sudden transitions. And HBR reports that companies with robust succession plans see 2.5 times higher revenue per employee. And LinkedIn tells us that companies that promote from within, when they grow their leaders, are 25% more likely to outperform their competitors. And we have 10,000 baby boomers now retiring every day. and out goes all that innate knowledge. Not to mention, we are also seeing Gen Xers start to retire earlier. And the lack of succession planning is one of the top 5 reasons organizations fail to meet growth goals. So without a clear succession plan, I would say exposes organizations to 2 critical risks. The first being financial and operational impacts. Leadership gaps can be very costly. Companies lose an average of 1.8 million per year due to poorly managed leadership transitions. And it takes a good 6 to 9 months for a new executive to reach full productivity, and that can cause delays or strategic misalignment. And the second critical risk is talent and engagement risk. Companies without succession plans see 50% higher voluntary turnover than those with structured plans. And employee disengagement, when you have a lack of a clear career path, that leads to uncertainty and attrition. 94% of employees say they would stay longer if a company invests in career development. It's almost 100%. So why succession planning matters? We all manage risk in our lives. Think about insurance for your car or your home. Succession planning works the same way for your organization. It's like having talent insurance. When you do it right, it builds your trust, it demonstrates commitment to the people on your teams, and it ensures long-term success of the company. And it's not just about filling roles, it's about preparing for the future with confidence. Not being proactive can leave you scrambling to fill critical positions. And in my tenure, this often leads to some rushed decisions, or you might miss an opportunity for an opportunity hire, we call it. It's gaining new skills, the potential to redesign a role that you need to be relevant in the future, or strengthening the team. Leadership gaps don't just create inconvenience, they disrupt operations. They erode stakeholder confidence, and it can stall strategic execution. So prioritizing succession planning changes that narrative. It provides continuity, aligns talent with future goals, and even creates a competitive advantage by enabling agility in shifting market conditions. Unplanned departures happen all the time. All of us face them. I've faced it several times being in the HR chair. But when organizations make that proactive strategic investment in workforce planning and talent pipelines, they build their stability, and that helps them in the future. So the more you invest in succession planning, the more options that you have. And who doesn't like options? Starting succession planning effectively requires both strategic intent, and we spent some time talking about that thus far. The good news is that you also need to combine that with some practical steps, and there's a process for this. We talked about it's very easy to overcomplicate the process, analyze way too much, and just kind of stall where to start. So the strategy to stability framework for succession planning outlines 4 phases to help you streamline your succession and keep it as clear as possible. You'll see here, strategy, identification, development, and stability. Those are kind of your guideposts for the framework. You want to start out by clarifying your purpose. Why are you doing it? Is it to ensure leadership continuity, minimize disruption, develop internal talent? And it's likely a combination of all of those things. A clear goal drives your right actions, and these 4 phases really go hand in hand to do that. Identify who should be involved in this process. Pinpoint the positions that are critical to your organization's success. Where you have a sudden vacancy would significantly impact your operations or maybe some of your strategic initiatives. The development phase is all about building leadership readiness through intentional growth opportunities. And for our team at Bankers Bank, we focus on what I call the 3 E's: education, experience, and exposure. Development doesn't always mean moving up the ladder. It can mean moving across the organization, what we call internal mobility, or gaining external perspective by serving on a board or attending a conference and sharing insights back with your team. Exposure development, in my experience, is the most overlooked yet most impactful development opportunity. While formal training or external training is very valuable, And don't get me wrong, subject matter experts, getting designations, certifications, those are all very important. But I think the real acceleration happens through stretch assignments, intern positions, shadowing other leaders, and giving strategic visibility. These experiences build confidence and reveal strengths and development areas in real time. And I think it strengthens your leadership bench much faster. So making exposure development opportunities intentional isn't just worth the effort, in my opinion, it's a game changer for readiness and organizational resilience. So this structured approach allows organizations to proactively prepare for leadership transitions while safeguarding kind of your operations. And once you have a framework in place, there's a critical step that follows, and that's conducting a thorough talent review, ensuring you understand who you have, what's your bench strength, and what gaps you might have before they become urgent. So the talent review is an opportunity to do some workforce planning. And it's not just the leadership roles, it's taking a look at all roles. It provides information on who to develop and how to go about it. A lot of people on this call are probably thinking we have a general idea of how we would replace our CEO or a top executive. Looking at the holistic organization, as you move employees up and through, there tends to be kind of this waterfall effect, and you might have gaps that arise. The talent review certainly helps you look at that big picture and kind of mitigate the business disruptions. I'm going to take it back to basketball for a minute here. The Bucks drafted an undeveloped player in Giannis years ago before they played him actively. He wasn't sure he'd get the chance to play. They brought him out when he was ready, when they needed him, and his development helped his performance. And now he has so many career highlights that you can't even list it on this presentation, and the plan ultimately worked. So that talent review is a structured process to assess and discuss employee performance, their potential, and readiness. Its primary goal is to identify high potential talent, successors for key roles, and uncover development opportunities. The best practice, in my opinion, is to use consistent criteria for evaluating both potential and performance to ensure fairness and being objective. Career conversations should be a balance between what the business needs are and what the individual aspirations are. And you're really just trying to get that alignment and build a match between organizational goals and employee growth. Tips for effective talent reviews include that diverse perspectives, engage a multitude of stakeholders in discussion to keep the insights broaden and reduce bias, and keep it forward looking as much as you can. You want to be thinking about growth, development, and future planning, and not just past performance. So assessing and identifying talent for succession involves evaluating both their performance and potential, like we talked about, and you want to evaluate their current contributions to your organization and what their future capabilities can look like. Then you want to layer in leadership competencies to determine readiness for advancement. And our team, we use a couple planning tools to do this that we'll cover today. It's best practice to align performance criteria to assess how well an employee delivers results in their current position. For example, how are they tracking to their goals? How are they tracking to their key performance indicators? How is the quality of their work? How consistent are they? Quality matters, but consistency does as well. What's their approach to teamwork? Do they have a collaborative spirit? Have they had positive customer impacts? Are they able to solution when something doesn't go so well with customers? And how resilient are they under pressure? Do you see shadow sides come out often when they're under stress? If leadership competencies aren't defined for your organization, it could be a good thing to explore. Start by gathering input from current leaders, benchmarking against industry standards, reviewing your company's mission, vision, and objectives. And this assures that your competencies align with your strategy. And for us, defining leadership competencies was critical to reflect who we are and who we serve. Our guiding principle, always your partner, never your competitor, is embedded into our leadership framework. And some of those leadership competency categories can include strategic vision and execution, innovation and growth, people and culture leadership, ethical governance, and operational excellence. So once these competencies are defined, assess them through a systematic approach using a consistent scale. And at Bankers Bank, we use developing, proficient, and advanced. Employees who are consistently performing at an advanced level in both competencies and performance are considered high potential, ready to assume greater responsibility. And this approach helps cultivate a clear understanding of talent readiness and future leadership capability. So I talked about, we're going to mention some of the tools we use at Bankers Bank, and we use the 9-box grid. And we use this to conduct our talent review. It's kind of a clear and simple way to align our game plan with talent. It's a one-page talent management. So the 9-box categorizes employees by current performance and potential. We often pull this out when we want to make sure we're investing our time and energy where we want to grow talent. The boxes in green are areas to focus. Those that score a 9, for example, in the top right corner, these are considered elite performers with strong leadership qualities, targeted for succession for the highest levels of an organization. And I often see quite a few talent pipelines when we start to do this with departments in yellow spaces, where there's opportunity to develop, invest, and grow. But these yellow categories do require keen attention and well thought out action plans to continue to vet out their potential and understand the best way to develop and recognize the talent and be ready for what performance gaps might exist. For example, a core employee right in the middle there, moderate performance, moderate potential. It would be best to recognize steady contributions and reliability of these employees and provide targeted development and stretch assignments to unlock further potential. Explore what motivates them and offer lateral moves or special projects. Effective employee, for an example, would be effective performance with low potential. And it's best to value and reward these expertise and consistent high performance. Focus on the retention and deepening their subject matter knowledge. And avoid pushing them into roles that don't fit the strengths or their aspirations. Instead, offering mentoring or project leadership within their area. Having an awareness of where you want to spend your time as an organization, where you want to spend your energy and the resources is impactful. This is really just one big organizational performance review. And the outcome is to have information on who your employees are, what are they ready for. We are looking for potential, performance, and readiness to move. It ends up being a beautiful view of what it all means. So when identifying and evaluating potential, the key is through conversations. Conversations are the most important currency of leadership succession, and I truly believe this. Different roles throughout your organizations can definitely impact how effective your discovery is. Each layered conversation helps. Senior leaders, when they have these conversations with employees, can often articulate the long-term vision of the organization, the leadership needs, what they can look like throughout the enterprise. Direct managers have that front seat view, probably the toughest role, where they can integrate succession planning on the job and with actionable development. I would say partner with your HR team to discuss strategies and what approaches you can implement on the job. Here's also a great way to streamline business continuity with making plans for knowledge sharing to retain that institutional knowledge. Engaging employees in these discussions builds a shared vision, clarifies what it truly means to exceed expectations and what is required to take on greater responsibilities. When employees understand this, they become more motivated to pursue development opportunities that benefit their growth, but also the organization's success. And those conversations are best when they are prepared for. Having a set of thoughtful questions and conversation starters is essential for holding meaningful career conversations. These help leaders go beyond just those surface level conversations and that dialogue and explore an employee's potential even further. The most effective questions are open-ended, and that creates space for richer conversations and greater insight. You'll see several categories outlined here to shape conversations. For example, asking what's possible encourages the employees to brainstorm, fosters a more proactive, forward-thinking dialogue. This is very different from a closed question. Are you interested in taking on a new project, which focuses only on the present or the past? The type of question you ask shapes the depth and the breadth of the conversation. Understanding your talent is not a one-time event. It's a journey. It's certainly not a straight line either. It requires time, your commitment, and in reality, it's several conversations. The goal is that each discussion kind of builds on the last and helps leaders and employees uncover their perspectives and what the possibilities are as you plan for succession. When we review talent, we also maintain a high potential list within our organization. And this list identifies individuals who are not only strong performers in their current positions, but also demonstrate the capacity for growth and readiness to take on greater responsibilities, including leadership positions. And one of the most challenging aspects, even in my position, is to assess potential. High performance does not automatically equal high potential. For example, an employee consistently exceeds sales targets and delivers exceptional results in their current role. However, when considering them for a leadership position, you discover they struggle with influencing others, delegating tasks, and strategic thinking. While they excel as an individual contributor, these gaps in leadership competencies could limit their readiness for a more complex role. Not to say that you can't develop them or unlock that potential. We review this list annually as a snapshot to ensure alignment with development plans and organizational priorities. And the list captures key details on it: education, credentials, both long-term and short-term development, and their career interests. And you might find opportunities where they're interested in another area in your organization. So you might be able to make a match on, having some peer-to-peer discussions and the discovery on where they want to head in their careers. Each year, we revisit the organization's definition of what it means to be a high potential. And we want to maintain that consistency and clarity in how talent is evaluated. Because circumstances and aspirations change. People are constantly changing. So it's not surprising that that list would evolve over time. So that continuous review is essential to keep it relevant, actionable, and aligned with some of your strategic needs. Identifying critical roles is a cornerstone of effective succession planning. Not all positions carry the same weight. Critical roles are those with high business impact and limited internal successor. So you'll see that in the green box there. Recognizing these positions ensures you focus your succession efforts where they matter most. And so to prioritize effectively, we use this criticality matrix, a tool that looks very similar to the 9 box. And this matrix helps us stay aligned on where we invest our time and our resources. When efforts are concentrated on the most impactful roles, leadership pipelines become stronger and more resilient. And a best practice is to engage senior leaders to validate the role importance and align succession strategies with the organizational priorities. So succession planning becomes far easier when you've completed your talent review and then identified your critical roles. So to do this, just start with your org chart. Identify what roles are critical. Understand why they matter to your organization's success, and define the strategy. Determine the best path forward. Will you build, buy, or rent talent? Consider internal options first. Internal replacements are often more cost-effective and support retention and engagement. Explore external talent as well. Continuously network and scan the market to identify strong external candidates, and kind of always keep your eye out for your next potential hire. So succession planning often uses a hybrid approach, combining both internal development with external recruitment when necessary. Organizations may consider hiring externally in a few different situations. For example, when your internal talent isn't ready. If you don't have internal candidates that are ready now, companies could look outside to prevent some of those leadership gaps. And this is often common when succession planning has been overlooked, or you may be experiencing rapid growth that outpaces some of your talent development. You might have a need for transformation. External leaders sometimes can bring fresh perspectives during times of disruption. Maybe there's a turnaround or a need for innovation and new ideas. Boards may seek someone with a different industry background or a skill set to lead significant change. Or there might be some cases where you need a cultural reset. That external hire can help reset values and rebuild trust. Or you might be facing expansion or a merger and an acquisition. Organizations may require certain leaders with specialized skills that are not available internally. And while there can be benefits of hiring externally, bringing fresh ideas, new strategies, may have a broader experience, might be able to think objectively, ability to make tough decisions without legacy bias or internal politics. They might be able to bring, previous experience and compare those practices with new industry standards or drive improvement. And sometimes there's an immediate impact need, hired for a quick results, especially in turnaround situations. Although external hiring evaluated to be a path forward in some scenarios, there are risks to be aware of. External hires may struggle to adapt to company values or team dynamics, and that's a big one, ultimately leading to cultural misalignment. They need time to learn the business, build relationships, and gain trust. It tends to be a longer ramp up, and those costs could be greater in hiring externally. So let's examine Coca-Cola's journey in succession planning and what we can learn from it. The first transition was Roberto mentored Doug for more than a decade. Doug had served as a CFO, and then 3 years later, before Roberto's passing in the late 1990s, he moved into the COO role, positioning him as the natural successor. Roberto was widely credited with driving a significant increase in Coca-Cola's market value during his tenure. And when he passed away in 1997, Doug had stepped in as the chairman and CEO. However, Doug's tenure lasted only 2 short years and was marked by declining shareholder equity and earnings. So what is that takeaway? Mentorship accelerates growth and readiness, but mentorship alone isn't enough. It must be paired with deliberate leadership development, readiness assessments, and a structured succession plan to ensure long-term success. And leadership readiness must be measured and not assumed. Despite Doug's long exposure to executive leadership, his transition revealed gaps in strategic execution and shareholder confidence. Succession planning cannot rely solely on tenure or proximity. It requires a validated leadership competencies and readiness assessments. A different approach years later, Mutter announced his retirement at the end of 2016. The Coca-Cola executed a well-structured transition plan, and James was named CEO 6 months in advance, allowing time for preparation. James assumed some day-to-day operations for 6 months while continuing to benefit from Kent's mentorship. Kent remained as a chairman of the board for 1 year, giving James time to acclimate before taking on additional responsibilities. So this deliberate approach built more board confidence and ensured the continuity. And the key takeaway here is that advanced planning provides stability and smooth leadership transitions. Learning from the past missteps helps organizations improve future succession strategies. So Coca-Cola's approach to succession planning has evolved over time and has become more strategic over time, particularly during Quincy's transition. The company had strengthened their internal pipelines, invested in mentoring, and minimized disruptions thanks to Quincy's long tenure. Some of their earlier transitions, however, revealed critical gaps. Leadership skills were not assessed adequately. They promoted unprepared leaders or overlooking opportunities for innovation, and that created a ripple effect across their organization. And so to avoid some of those pitfalls, organizations must invest in mentoring, planning, and competency assessments to ensure strategic alignment, and be mindful of what's called the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle is a management theory that employees are often promoted based on success in their current role and not their ability to exceed in the next role. And that's usually a more complex role. So what does that mean for succession planning? Promotion should be based on validated readiness, not just assumptions. And without proper assessment, leaders may advance until they reach a level where their skills no longer fit. And that would lead to poor performance at higher levels. So I get asked this probably more than any other question. What is the right transition time when someone announces their retirement or you have a replacement hire? And my response is probably like every other HR leader, it depends. I would say best practice is anywhere from 3 to 6 months of transition time, depending on the complexity of the position. When you look at 3 to 6 months, I would say that's standard, and that provides enough time for the company to advertise the role, start to network, interview, and hire a candidate. Now, when you get into the time frame of about 6 months to a year, I think that's more essential for some of your senior or executive positions where they have extensive institutional knowledge, or you need to manage a lot of seamlessness within your organizational culture. And this allows for a more methodical hiring process and a longer training period for the new employee to potentially learn from the retiree. And then I would say 3 to 5 years is best practice to start succession development practices and development for anticipated transitions. Executive leadership development should be ongoing and not just triggered by an upcoming retirement or departure. So embedding stability into your culture, building stability in your culture helps you prevent those blind spots when talent exits unexpectedly. And so having an emergency succession plan is essential. If someone walked into your office tomorrow and said, I just won the lottery, would you have an interim solution ready? And that's actually a true story. At one of my previous positions, somebody had won the lottery. So both short-term and long-term plans are critical for maintaining continuity. And we talked about 10,000 baby boomers retiring daily and the Generation X approaching retirement thereafter. Proactive planning is more important than ever. So one of the most critical stability factors is the knowledge transfer protocols. Sharing institutional knowledge ensures that you have smooth transitions and it reduces team stress. And that's a really important thing to be mindful of. And it protects that customer experience. And this is an area that we've prioritized for our team because much of the organization's knowledge base can be undocumented or outdated. So start this process as you bring new hires in on day one. Explain why it matters, how it supports organizational resilience. You can tell with a new hire when they have to pick up a procedure or institutional knowledge. If they can't follow it, it's a good time to update it. And we use a structured checklist that includes strategic knowledge transfers, operational knowledge to make sure we go over that. What does our decision-making frameworks look like? What do approvals look like? What are your documentation standards and timelines? And all of this is great, but leaders need to buy into this too and protect the institutional knowledge and make it easier for teams. Work harder or work smarter, not harder, right? That classic line. And these are some things that you can really try to embed into your culture to provide that stability. And so by embedding these practices in your culture, you create that foundation that can withstand some of the change and keeps the team stress low. And that organizations that plan for knowledge continuity are far more resilient during times of change. So HR plays the role of being the overall employee development coach at our organization, keeping an eye on employee growth and development and kind of keeping us on track in combination with key stakeholders. And leaders too need to see who's up next and who's ready. I like this quote from Coach K. Leadership is a continuous study of people. This means great leaders are always learning about their teams, their strengths, their motivations, and potential. So succession readiness is built on the foundation of knowing who your people are, just as Coach K suggests, so that you can know how to motivate, challenge, and prepare them for leadership when the time comes. So really having impactful conversations and career discussions is vitally important to your succession plan. So succession planning is not just a set it and forget it strategy like any business initiative. It needs to be measured, monitored, and refined. So how do you know if your plan is actually working? And there are some key indicators and metrics that would signal success. Look at your bench strength. Do you have ready now or ready soon candidates for critical roles? Are there multiple successors identified for each position? What does your internal promotion rate look like? What percentage of leadership roles are filled internally? A high internal fill rate would suggest strong talent pipelines. And are you retaining your top talent? If high potentials are leaving, it may signal a lack of visibility or opportunity. And review your leadership development participation. Are employees actively engaged in development programs? Track their completion rates. Likely all of you have HR teams, probably an HRIS system where you can track designations, certifications, and training. How are internal promoted leaders performing is another indicator. Strong performance post-promotion validates your succession process. Define what success monitoring should be for your organization and continue to iterate on the process. Just get started with some of these key metrics. Both the 9-box talent review and the critical role mapping tool are effective and clear ways to iterate your talent plan, and that's what we use at our organization. But you can also check with your HR team if they have a way to automate this and make it easier. Many organizations have a human resource information system designed for having a organization succession tool, and it's designed for workforce planning. And these can kind of simplify your data, give you dashboards and even forecasts with some AI-driven modeling. So remember those organizations that use succession planning process, they report more productivity and revenue up to 2.5 times more than organizations that don't do succession planning. So while an HRIS system could range in cost, it might be right for your organization in saving time and energy and be worth the spend. You can also consider hiring a professional the first time you complete a succession plan. And once you have that in place, your internal team could likely iterate and keep it ongoing. And we have a quick reference guide outlining the things we talked about today and our best pro tips. Talk about why are you doing this? Is it continuity? Develop your internal talent? Is it expansion? Conduct that talent review. I think out of this whole list, that is the most helpful and most impactful to know what you have for talent and where you're heading. And then start to review your critical positions and identify areas you want to focus. It's easy to really get stuck in the weeds and the details and tied up with the day-to-day demands of the business, but keeping your talent management to one page gives a clear starting point and the confidence to act on your plans. And once you have the plan, you can review it, track progress, and adjust as needed. And a great resource is the book of One-Page Talent Management. It kind of cuts down that complexity and process and gets clear on where you could add the most value in your talent management. And Mark Efron has also written the book on steps for high performance. So that's a nice complementary book as well. And that's a great resource as you grow talent and think of strategies to do so. And remember, if it doesn't fit on one page, it probably isn't clear enough to execute it. And it's been great having a chance to share the importance of talent planning with all of you this morning and how you can build succession readiness into your teams. And I'll hand it back over to David as he reviews risks that organizations can face without succession plans.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Ryan and I actually met a few weeks ago for a talent interview, and her questions about what I saw in my future and what roles I'd be interested in doing in the organization, I was very insightful to me. And the questions were framed in a way that provoked some self-consideration I hadn't thought of before, and what the future I wanted to do at Bankers Bank. So as an employee, I felt highly valued of that, but also that my future was framed in a way that kind of made me think about what exactly I wanted to do. We just heard from Ryan, who shared some great information about succession planning and how you can make that insightful and a good fit for your organization. I'd like to pivot now to the risk management side of this, specifically the strategic, reputational, and systemic risk when it comes to planned or unplanned vacancies in your senior leadership team. And strategic risks about achieving your financial goals, and the expected or unexpected vacancies and how they hit your bottom line. While you may not have the succession plan set as a measurable risk in your ERM platform, it should be part of your quality of risk management. Finding measurable results on succession planning to report quarterly wouldn't be an easy task if you're in the future planning stage, which is what we're going to talk about right now. But if you are interested in getting some specific indicators to measure long-term risks to your strategic program, Bankers Bank, we do have resources available to our customers. So don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to get some more information on that. So let's start talking about changes in senior leadership. And these would be planned or expected changes. And following Ryan's example, talking about, 6 months to a year would be ideal. And therefore, any change that you bring about in the senior leadership would be a pivot of some of your strategic initiatives. And so how involved is your senior leadership with customers? If you're looking at that for customers, that's going to affect your pipeline. If they retire, well, your customers know who to turn to, and will it continue as business as usual? And then finally, too, there's the change of the internal culture of the bank. If it was stagnant growth in the past, you don't want that to continue. You want a new senior leader who can hit the gas. Whenever you're talking about that, make sure that your search involves that. But also, too, will your key staff members, the ones who actually do a lot of the work behind the scenes, tolerate a major change in a disruption of the status quo? So think about that as well as the bank pivots to new initiatives. Will the existing team be on board with that as well? And then thinking about strategic risk too, at a time of planned leadership change, you may have a chance to redesign your bank for the future. Does your new leader understand the gaps to fill in development? Such as if you're looking to launch digital banking, does your new CEO understand all the ins and outs of launching that kind of new business? Do they understand how their leadership in affecting other areas of the bank? Will they have strong performers around them who can actually complement their lack of experience in some areas? Again, thinking of our senior leader who was going to fill the gap for digital banking knowledge, but they're a little shaky on credit. You also want to say, well, I will surround you by some folks who are very strong with credit and help you learn the ropes on that so you can be a well-rounded leader in the future. But your current leadership vacuum in digital banking, as our example, is someone that you definitely want to have on your team. And then finally, to align new leadership style with the bank's near and long-term goal. Ryan talked about that as well. Find a leader who will take you where you want to go. And if it's taking a break from growth, that sounds odd, but some banks are looking to take a break from growth. Don't hire somebody who's going to fill that role, who wants to hit the gas even harder and go on from there. Reputational risk. So this is now talking about reputation and your public image in the marketplace. And what does a planned change look like to your customers in the public? And if you already had a reputational measures in your current ERM platform, you have a good baseline for how customers feel about the bank. So during this transition, you can see how your customer perception changes using your historic and then current quarter ERM reports to get a good baseline for that as well. We won't get into any specific indicators today, but if you're interested in strengthening your ERM program, specifically around reputational risk as well, again, reach out to us as a resource for that. So an information campaign needs to start early, speaks clearly and directly to customers about the change of an executive. Think about anywhere your customers would look for information to have that available. And also too, if they are retiring and you had plenty of time to do this, but you didn't reach out to your local business communities and your chief customers, they'll start to speculate about what happened. Your CEO might have retired to the south of France, but the rumor mill could start that they had gotten forced out or early retirement. So you want to make sure that you talk to local business groups and key customers as well about the transition and when that's going to occur. And also to give customers a time frame whenever a retirement is going to occur. And let's say that your CEO is going to retire at the end of 2026. Think about when you want to make that announcement public and have the discussion with your public, your customers, your board of directors. I'm sorry, your customers and leadership groups about whenever that discussion is going to take place. So that way too, and give them a chance to say goodbye. And then also too, some of the reputational risks as well would be the loss of key institutional knowledge. And Ryan talked about that as well. And make sure you capture all that before they go out the front door forever. So now let's talk about now the risk of unexpected leadership changes. And Ryan used the example of they won the lottery. And so if we think about the vacuum of strategic leadership and the sudden profound effects on the bank, this is our much higher risk to the organization. And I once worked with at a bank that lost an entire lending team at once because they the term that I heard used was they were lifted out of the organization. So they hired the chief lender and all of their commercial lending executive team went out of the bank at the exact same time, left a huge hole in the bank's leadership team and the business development team. And so whenever you're thinking about that, the pipeline could dry up real fast. Customers getting to close or coming on board won't hear from the bank anymore, and possibly the team that had left you might have taken that pipeline to another institution. And again, thinking about who else is leaving, if you have a key person on your team that would be in business development, think about the folks that are closely associated with them who may leave the bank as well. Reputational risk, again, thinking about the unexpected departure of a key executive. Where does that leave the bank in the eye of the public? This could result in a health emergency as well as an attractive offer from a competitor. And so therefore, let's talk about some reputational risks that an institution should consider with some of that with a sudden departure. And the first one is provide answers to the public and be honest with your customers and use that time to show how trustworthy your institution is. Information to local chambers of commerce and business groups. Again, talk to the same folks that we would during a planned transition. We want to talk about that as well during an unplanned transition. So therefore, we get the message out, and the message is timely. It's curated to what the bank wants to say, but also to it's very transparent with customers and the business community, and they can ask questions. And also, too, key customers need to know why a departure occurred and what the plan is. And you want to project strength and stability and that there isn't a crisis going on. And one thing I always like to consider with reputational risk is also, what else did they do? Were they really visible in the community? Did they lead the hometown 4th of July parade? Did they volunteer at a local food pantry? Did they coordinate the annual United Way campaign? So make a list of what your senior leaders are doing, both in the bank and outside of the bank on behalf of the bank, so that the spirit of those individuals live on, even if they do leave the bank as well. And talking about enterprise risk management, let's quickly talk about systemic risk. And of course, I'm going to mention that because that's what enterprise risk management is all about, because risks don't stay in silos. So let's prepare for risks large and small throughout the institution. And unexpected leadership changes, is there a knowledge gap in key areas of the bank? If they were really involved in your bank's cybersecurity program, is somebody ready to step in? What areas the bank will suffer first, and what other areas will begin to feel the effects of that relatively soon? So again, thinking about that knowledge and the systemic risk of how that knowledge vacuum will go through the institution and how you can overcome that. And again, don't wait for that person to leave and start making your disaster checklist. Think about this beforehand whenever you're using Ryan's example of a key employee. Go back and make a list of your key performers and what they do at the bank and how that might have a domino effect throughout the organization. And then finally, too, what's the time frame for a permanent replacement? Don't jump on the first interviewee, but set an expectation with your HR, and if you're using an outside recruiter, on how soon that role needs to get filled before it becomes a systemic issue. And of course, there's the loss of culture to the bank. Does that loss of a key executive shake the bank to its core? Does it demoralize the bank? Did your most important customers see this chief executive as the only reason for banking at that institution? So was this, executive the face of the bank in the community? So think about that as well. And then also too, does the new hire of the bank make a substantial change that destabilizes the workforce? What will turnover look like in the institution? Which folks can you not afford to lose with that? So to wrap up, let's talk about, be proactive, have a viable emergency succession plan. Don't wing it, hope for the best. Begin the knowledge transfer early. Sometimes tasks only happen once or twice a year, so you want that heir apparent to be present and have a hands-on experience for doing that knowledge transfer. Understand how the culture occur, the culture change will occur. So just be prepared for that and think about what that might mean. And then finally, too, any leadership change has wide-ranging effects, some intended and some unintended. So in the spirit of time, we've got 3 more minutes left. We're going to skip the questions, but if you have any questions at all, feel free to send it via the chat room anyway, and we'll respond to you after the webinar is over with. I did want to talk about quickly on November 21st at 10 a.m. Central, we're going to have a very special webinar for agriculture credit. Our guest speaker is going to be Professor Gerald Machon and with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And it's a 1-hour focus on ag lending and the credit portfolio stresses for this year and next year. And the first invite's already been sent out, but we'll send out a reminder again very soon. But we're excited to offer that to you for commercial customers as well. And it's been a pleasure presenting with you today. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us, and thank you all for attending, and we'll make sure that we'll get you a copy of the slides and a recording of the webinar as well, just to make sure to follow up on that survey so we can use those replies to plan our next webinar. Thank you all very much and have a great rest of your day.